Welcome back to another deep dive into geopolitical analysis. Today we're exploring one of the most misunderstood relationships in international politics, the connection between China, Russia, and Israel. While public rhetoric often suggests these nations are on opposite sides of global conflicts, the reality beneath the surface tells a very different story. What I'm about to share challenges conventional narratives. You won't hear this analysis on mainstream channels, and there's a reason for that. The relationship between these three powers operates in the shadows, driven by strategic interests that transcend ideological posturing and public declarations. By the end of this analysis, you'll understand why Beijing and Moscow maintain quiet but significant ties with Tel Aviv, even as they publicly align with different regional actors. You'll see how this triangular relationship shapes Middle Eastern politics, influences global energy markets, and reveals the true nature of great power competition in the 21st century. Okay, let's begin by dismantling some assumptions. The mainstream narrative presents a clear picture. China and Russia support Iran, Syria, and Palestinian causes. Israel aligns with the United States and Western powers. These camps are adversarial, locked in competition for regional dominance. The media reinforces this binary every day, but this narrative serves a purpose. It simplifies complex relationships for public consumption while masking the actual strategic calculations that drive state behavior. Real geopolitics rarely fits into neat categories of friend and foe. To understand the present, we must first examine the past. The relationship between these nations has deep roots that predate current conflicts. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union maintained complicated ties with Israel despite officially supporting Arab states. Tens of thousands of Soviet Jews immigrated to Israel, creating cultural and familial connections that persist today. Soviet military technology found its way into Israeli hands through various channels, studied and reverse engineered. China's relationship with Israel began warming significantly in the late 20th century. As Beijing emerged from isolation following Mao's death, Israeli technology and expertise became invaluable. The two nations discovered mutual interests that transcended their different political systems. Why states act differently than they speak? States operate on multiple levels simultaneously. Public diplomacy serves domestic audiences and maintains international positioning. Private channels handle actual business, technology transfers, intelligence sharing, economic cooperation. This dual-track approach isn't hypocrisy, it's sophisticated statecraft. China can publicly support Palestinian statehood while privately importing Israeli technology. Russia can sell weapons to Syria while maintaining open lines to Israeli leadership. These aren't contradictions, but rather the normal operation of states pursuing complex, multifaceted interests. The key insight: nations don't have permanent friends or enemies, only permanent interests. Understanding those interests reveals the hidden architecture of international relations. China's primary interest in Israel centers on technology acquisition. Israel ranks as one of the world's most innovative nations per capita, particularly in sectors critical to Chinese development: cybersecurity, agriculture, water management, medical technology, and military applications. Consider the proportions. Despite having a tiny fraction of the world's population, Israel produces a disproportionate share of global technological innovation. For China, which seeks to climb the value chain and escape the middle-income trap, Israeli expertise represents a shortcut. Chinese investment in Israeli technology companies has grown exponentially over recent decades. Venture capital flows from Chinese firms into Israeli startups across multiple sectors. These aren't merely commercial transactions, they're strategic investments in China's technological future. Israel's agricultural technology solves problems China desperately needs addressed. With limited arable land and growing water scarcity, China faces the challenge of feeding over 1 billion people. Israeli drip irrigation, desert farming techniques, and agricultural biotechnology offer solutions. Chinese officials have studied Israeli kibbutz models, water recycling systems, and crop optimization strategies. Multiple Chinese provinces have established agricultural cooperation agreements with Israeli institutions. This knowledge transfer happens quietly, away from headlines, but its impact on Chinese food security is substantial. The scale of Chinese agricultural challenges demands innovation. Traditional farming methods cannot sustain growing urban populations with rising living standards. Israeli techniques for maximizing yield per hectare, reducing water consumption, and adapting to harsh climates directly address Chinese needs. Chinese delegations regularly visit Israeli agricultural research centers and experimental farms. They observe techniques for growing crops in desert conditions, managing water resources efficiently, and integrating technology into traditional farming. These lessons return to China and influence policy at provincial and national levels. Water scarcity ranks among China's most pressing long-term challenges. Northern China faces severe water stress, while southern regions experience flooding. Israel, having turned desert into farmland through water innovation, possesses expertise China cannot easily obtain elsewhere. Elsewhere, Israeli desalination technology, water recycling systems, and conservation methods have been exported to China through both official channels and private partnerships. Chinese engineers have trained in Israel, studying systems that could be adapted to Chinese conditions. The technical sophistication of Israeli water management impresses Chinese planners. Israel recycles wastewater at rates unmatched globally, turning sewage into irrigation water through advanced treatment processes. Chinese cities struggling with water shortages see these systems as potential models. Beyond technology, Israel's integrated approach to water management offers lessons in governance and planning, how water resources are allocated, how competing demands are balanced, and how long-term sustainability is ensured provide frameworks Chinese authorities study carefully. This remains the most sensitive aspect of the relationship. During the late 20th and early 21st century, China sought to modernize its military, which had fallen behind technologically. Israeli defense technology, much of it derived from American systems, became highly attractive. Several high-profile incidents brought this cooperation into public view, creating diplomatic tensions with Washington. The Falcon radar system deal, ultimately canceled under American pressure, exemplified the complications. Yet technology transfers continued through less visible channels. Chinese weapons systems show clear influences from Israeli designs. Certain drone technologies, missile guidance systems, and electronic warfare capabilities bear resemblances that suggest knowledge transfer, whether through official cooperation, private channels, or reverse engineering. The attraction is obvious. Israel fights wars regularly, testing and refining military technology in actual combat conditions. This operational experience provides insights that theoretical development cannot match. Chinese military planners value combat-proven systems and the lessons embedded in their design. Israeli defense companies operate in a unique position, small enough to be flexible, large enough to be sophisticated, and experienced enough to be credible. They offer technologies unavailable from American sources, yet more advanced than what China could develop independently in similar timeframes. Israel's geographic position makes it relevant to China's Belt and Road Initiative. The Eastern Mediterranean serves as a crucial link between Asian markets and European consumers. Israeli ports, particularly Haifa, have attracted Chinese investment and operational interest. China's state-owned shipping company manages Haifa's port, giving Beijing a strategic foothold in the Mediterranean. This investment sparked security concerns in Washington, as the port also serves American naval vessels. Yet it proceeded, demonstrating the priority China places on this relationship. Beyond physical infrastructure, Israel's position in global telecommunications and digital infrastructure makes it valuable to Chinese strategic planning. The future of global connectivity runs through nodes where Israeli technology plays significant roles. The Belt and Road Initiative isn't merely about roads and ports, it's about creating economic dependencies and political influence. Israel's integration into global supply chains, its technological sophistication, and its connections to Western markets make it a valuable node in this network. And Chinese planners view infrastructure investment as creating long-term strategic options. Control over critical ports, participation in major projects, and economic interdependencies all serve broader geopolitical objectives. Israel represents an opportunity to extend Chinese influence into the Mediterranean basin. Here, the relationship becomes truly interesting. China maintains strong ties with Iran, its oil supplier and Belt and Road partner. Simultaneously, China maintains robust relations with Israel, Iran's regional adversary. How does Beijing manage this contradiction? The answer lies in compartmentalization. China pursues energy security through Iranian oil while simultaneously accessing Israeli technology. Beijing doesn't see this as contradictory, but rather as maximizing strategic options. China carefully manages both relationships to avoid forcing a choice between them. Chinese diplomacy emphasizes economic cooperation and non-interference, allowing Beijing to maintain relationships across ideological and political divides. This approach serves Chinese interests even as it frustrates those seeking clear alignments. When tensions rise between Iran and Israel, China adopts studied neutrality in public while managing relationships privately. Beijing urges restraint, offers mediation, and emphasizes shared interests in regional stability. This positioning preserves access to both parties. The Iranian relationship provides China with energy resources and a foothold in the Persian Gulf. The Israeli relationship provides technology and access to Western markets. China sees no reason to sacrifice either relationship for the sake of ideological consistency. China faces domestic and international pressures regarding its Israel relationship. The Chinese public, influenced by media coverage, generally sympathizes with Palestinian causes. Regional partners in the Middle East expect Chinese support for their positions. Beijing manages these pressures through careful rhetorical positioning. China votes with developing nations in international forums on Palestinian issues, maintaining its third world credentials. Public statements emphasize support for Palestinian statehood and criticism of settlement expansion. Yet, these positions cost China little while preserving access to Israeli technology and investment opportunities. Chinese leaders have mastered the art of saying one thing publicly while doing another privately, a skill refined over decades of managing domestic contradictions. Chinese media coverage of Middle Eastern issues reflects this balancing act. State media presents sympathetic coverage of Palestinian perspectives while avoiding inflammatory rhetoric that might damage relations with Israel. The tone remains measured, emphasizing peaceful resolution and mutual respect. Behind this public facade, bilateral exchanges continue uninterrupted. Technology transfers, investment flows, and official visits proceed regardless of rhetorical positions in international forums. The Chinese understand that Israel, too, manages its own public pressures and appreciates Beijing's tactical flexibility. So, Russia and Israel share interests in Eastern Mediterranean energy development. Major natural gas discoveries off Israel's coast created opportunities for cooperation in extraction, transportation, and marketing. Russian energy companies possess expertise and capital that Israel needs for optimal development. While political complications limit overt cooperation, private channels and third-party arrangements facilitate knowledge sharing and investment. The European market for natural gas represents potential competition between Russian and Israeli supplies, but also opportunities for coordination and market management. Russian oligarchs with ties to the Kremlin have invested in Israeli real estate, technology companies, and other sectors. These investments create economic interdependencies that influence political calculations. Money flowing between Moscow and Tel Aviv builds stakeholder constituencies favoring continued cooperation. The energy dimension extends beyond natural gas. Israel seeks to position itself as an energy hub, connecting resources from the Eastern Mediterranean to European markets. Russia's experience in pipeline construction, energy transport infrastructure, and market access provides valuable expertise. Economic relationships create their own momentum. Once investments are made and partnerships established, both sides develop interest in protecting those assets. This creates constituencies within both societies favoring cooperation regardless of political tensions. Russia supplies advanced weapons to Syria, Iran, and other actors hostile to Israel. Simultaneously, Russia maintains open communications with Israeli defense officials and shares intelligence on regional threats. This seeming contradiction actually, by arming Israel's adversaries, Russia maintains influence in the Middle East and generates revenue. By cooperating with Israel, Russia gains intelligence insights and maintains channels to Western security establishments. Russia plays multiple sides, extracting value from each relationship. Israeli officials understand this game and accept it as the price of maintaining Russian cooperation on issues that matter more. Preventing Iranian entrenchment in Syria outweighs concerns about Russian weapon sales to Damascus. Geopolitics involves constant trade-offs and priority setting. The sophistication of Russian weapon systems sold to Syria and Iran creates genuine security challenges for Israel. Advanced air defense systems, precision missiles, and electronic warfare capabilities complicate Israeli military operations. Yet Israel adapts its tactics and maintains military superiority. Russian arms sales to Israel's adversaries provide Moscow with leverage. When Russia withholds certain advanced systems or delays deliveries, Israel notices and appreciates the restraint. These invisible actions matter more than public statements. Though rarely discussed publicly, Russia and Israel share intelligence on mutual threats, particularly regarding extremist movements. Both nations face security challenges from radical ideologies and have experienced devastating attacks. This creates common ground despite broader disagreements. The exact nature and extent of this cooperation remains classified, but multiple indicators suggest ongoing exchanges. Counterterrorism requires information sharing across ideological boundaries. Pragmatism trumps political theater when lives are at stake. Russian intelligence services possess different capabilities and access than Israeli counterparts. Russia's relationships in the Middle East provide information streams Israel cannot easily tap. Israel's technological sophistication and Western intelligence partnerships offer insights valuable to Moscow. These complementary capabilities create opportunities for mutually beneficial cooperation. The intelligence relationship extends beyond counterterrorism. Regional stability, weapons proliferation, and power dynamics all interest both nations. Information about Iranian activities, Turkish ambitions, and extremist movements flows through channels connecting Moscow and Tel Aviv. Trust in intelligence relationships develops slowly through repeated interactions and demonstrated reliability. The Russian-Israeli intelligence connection has matured over years, surviving political tensions and regional crises. Professional relationships between intelligence officers transcend political rhetoric. Iran represents the most delicate aspect of the Russian-Israeli relationship. Russia views Iran as a strategic partner, particularly for balancing American influence in the Middle East. Israel views Iran as an existential threat requiring containment and rollback. These contradictory positions could rupture the relationship, but haven't. Instead, Russia and Israel manage the contradiction through careful compartmentalization. Russia supports Iran broadly, while restraining Iranian actions that cross Israeli red lines. Israel accepts Russian-Iranian partnership while insisting on limits to Iranian activities in Syria and Lebanon. This balancing act isn't stable or permanent. Tensions periodically rise when Iran tests boundaries, or Israel conducts particularly aggressive operations. Yet both Moscow and Tel Aviv have incentives to prevent complete rupture, creating resilience in the relationship. Russian officials communicate regularly with both Iranian and Israeli counterparts, managing expectations and preventing miscalculations. When Israel prepares major operations against Iranian targets, Russian channels often provide advance warning, allowing Moscow